Alrighty, and we are recording. So tonight's guest is Charlie Reifenberger. Charlie, did I say that right?
Yeah, you did. That was perfect.
Fantastic. Man, thanks a bunch for coming on tonight.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
Like, I'm looking outside and it looks like here in Tennessee, 2 inches of snow is a big freaking deal, you know?
Absolutely. Yep. Yep. Here, especially in Memphis. Especially
Yeah,
in Memphis, Tennessee.
it's a big freaking deal. So,
Absolutely.
um, yeah, let's see. So Charlie, when I first met Charlie, was it during the Tennessee taking action? Was it during the range day?
It was during the range
So
day. Yep.
we
Yep.
had a range day. Tennessee taking action decided, hey, let's have a range day, and um, I volunteered to RSO the event, and
Mhm.
you know, people enjoyed it. We all had a great time. There was no incidents, no accidents, and that was where I met Charlie. And dude, like he brought me onto his podcast. He has a
That's right.
fantastic podcast. It's called Golden Nonsense.
Golden
Um,
nonsense.
he
It
hosts
is.
it with a dude named John Miller, and you know, um, both of those guys are stand-up comedians. They're Second Amendment, activists. They're just awesome dudes. So,
That's correct. We are funny fellas. We tell jokes. And we have a podcast. Please check it out. Golden Nonsense. I think it's entertaining. It's not as informative or useful as this show. This everyday conversations is I would say more stimulating mentally, whereas Golden Nonsense is just more of a good time, just relax and laugh kind of a podcast, which you need both, right? I think you need podcasts that make you think and give you information, but then I think there's also
man,
sometimes you just need a podcast that just you can turn your brain off and just laugh, and that's what Golden Nonsense is good for. So if
man,
that sounds up your alley, guys, go check it out.
it's a fun podcast. Like, really gotta check it out.
Yeah. And Mikos was on episode 86. So if you guys want to go listen, that was a good episode.
It's a pretty appropriate number. No, I had a ton of fun. It was one of the more, it was I think it was the most fun I've had on somebody's podcast. Like, it was so funny.
That's all we're going for. It's just fun. So we
Yeah.
call it golden nonsense because it's usually pretty much nonsense, but usually it's golden too. It's high quality nonsense.
Yeah. So Charlie, so I'd like to hear your origin story because every superhero has an origin story. I want to hear yours. How'd you get into shooting? How did all this stuff become an interest to you?
Well, I'm a big Second Amendment guy, and I always have been. I've always been supportive of people's right to bear arms. I think it's an important I think it's people say it comes from the Constitution. I think it comes from God. I think that God put us on this earth, and He gave us the right to defend ourselves, and it's a moral, not just a moral something that you're morally justified in doing. I think it's an obligation almost to stand up for yourself and protect yourself when necessary. And but I haven't been a gun owner for very long. I don't know if you know this. I've been sober for 3 years now. I'm a sober gentleman. No drinking, no drugs, none of that. And the reason I got sober is because I had a pretty good drinking problem. I could not handle alcohol very well, and so while I always wanted to own a firearm, knowing that I had a drinking problem, I was like, I think you shouldn't own a gun. I think that if you have an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, you probably shouldn't be owning a gun. If you times I would black out, I wouldn't remember what happened. I think that's horribly irresponsible to be a gun owner in that circumstance. So I sobered up, and about a year went by where I was, sober, and I was like, I think I could handle being a responsible gun owner. So I went ahead and went and bought my first firearm, and yeah, never looked back. I just have so much fun just doing regular training and shooting and practicing. It's really great. I love going on Fridays after work. there's a range right by my office, and I'll just pop in and blast off 50 rounds and quick quick little range session and head home. It's really something. And I, I'm from Atlanta originally, which Atlanta's a pretty dangerous city, but Memphis is a little bit more of it's a little bit more present in people's minds that something could happen going out on an average night. So um, having a concealed weapon, it makes me a lot more secure walking around the streets of Memphis, especially late at night, especially when I'm going to a comedy club and
Yeah.
not getting out of there till midnight. Um,
Yeah.
it's just a little bit of a reassurance that if something does go down, that I'll be ready. So
That's the amount of self-awareness that all that takes is extreme. Oh, that's incredible.
yeah, you mean just not wanting to own a weapon when I know I'm acting irresponsibly and
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That's
Well,
absolutely that is some extreme amount of self-awareness. Wow.
yeah, I was self-aware enough to know I had a problem, but not self-aware enough to 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 think my way out of having a problem. But yeah, I'm so happy to be sober anyway. So it's all good, really.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, going out and drinking, dude, it's kind of I don't know, man. I'm kind of over it. Like
Yeah,
when I was in my 30s and stuff, it was a big deal. But
y-
like most of the time, I do my drinking at home. You know,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, crack
It's
open
like
some brandy or something, or like lately I've been on like an
it's
Irish whiskey kick.
Yeah,
So,
sure, sure. I used to love Tullamore Dew was my jam. I used to love some
huh,
Tullamore Dew. It's good stuff. Yeah, it's like Jameson or something like that. But
yeah,
no, it's nice. Having a drink is nice, but I really don't miss it at all. Once you just get over the initial, just habit, that it's just money in my pocket really when it comes down to it. I'm just not spending money when I'm going out and not wasting money on that. And there's a million things you can do to relieve stress and decompress. It, shooting at the range is one of those things. So,
yeah.
stand-up comedy is pretty good um, way to relieve stress. Just go
Oh my
just
gosh.
just go tell jokes on a stage. It's kind of a drug in of itself. It's
Or
definitely
even
an
just
adrenaline
listening to
rush.
jokes,
Oh,
like
sure.
just
Yeah.
dude
Yeah.
hanging out. Like so, forgive me because I kind of forget the name of the comedy. The name of the location that John Miller runs. What was the name of that place?
It's called The High Tone.
The High Tone. Yeah,
The
that's
High
right.
Tone.
The
Yep,
High Tone.
it's a music and performance venue. They do comedy there, on every Tuesday night, they do, an open mic, and then they'll have weekend showcases periodically there as well. But they do everything. They do rock music, they do rave music. They have a poetry night every Monday is poetry night at the High Tone. So it's just really an all kinds of different arts, and it's a very cool place. So if you guys aren't doing anything on a Tuesday night, want to come just laugh and have a good time, the High Tone is a great spot.
Yeah, I had a ton of fun, dude. Like it was it was really just kind of nice to just sit back and just chill,
Yeah,
and just listen to like good jokes and fun people.
yeah,
Just,
and some
yeah.
bad jokes too, and some bad comedians, right? You saw
This
some guys that weren't that talented, but honestly, I'll tell you straight up, sometimes I laugh the hardest at people who are just the worst comedians. Some Sometimes that's just nothing will make me laugh harder than a guy who just is just like, talking about being self-aware. Somebody who's completely not self-aware up there on stage, just trying to I don't even like just throwing material out that it's like I don't even understand what you thought you had there. Like that to me will make me laugh. I'll be in the back. The whole audience will be staring awkwardly, and I'll just be in the back of the room cackling. That's kind of that's Just yeah, I don't know.
Oh man, yeah, there was a lot of that. Like it's like, oh man, you want to
Oh,
just
man.
kind of wrap it up. Like, oh, like those, like
Yeah.
you can tell too. Like if you could
Mhm.
really have like a really good moment of self awareness, it'll be like, all right, takes one to know one.
Yeah.
All right, well,
Yeah.
you guys have a great night. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, he
Yeah,
knew,
and
he knew.
you're always rooting for him too. You're always like, "Come on, man, just bring it back.
Yeah,
You're gonna get him back." And
yeah.
so sometimes it happens, but usually it doesn't. So, yeah,
Oh
but,
man, that's good stuff.
um, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
But
So,
yeah,
Charlie, let's see. What kind of stuff do you usually shoot? Like handguns, long guns, like
uh
shotguns?
well, I'm not good with shotguns. That's actually probably my weak spot. I need to practice. I'm going duck hunting in 2 weeks, and, I'm a little nervous about that 'cause, um, I've done skeet shooting before, and I have a little bit of trouble with it. It's not is I'm really good at just lining up a sight and pulling the trigger. Like, I can really hit a target pretty effectively if I, scope or iron sights, but, a shotgun is difficult for me. My primary weapon is a 9 millimeter. I shoot a Smith and Wesson M&P 9 Shield. That's my
Yeah,
primary weapon that I keep on me, and then that's what I train with the most frequently. I also have a Ruger 1022, just basic standard 22 rifle, and it's got a really nice vortex scope on it that I put on there. It's a little overkill for a little pea
no, that's
shooter
good.
22 rifle, but I'm pretty surgical with it, and, that's my squirrel gun. So that's
Yeah,
what I use when I do small game hunting. And then I also have a high point carbine 9 millimeter as well. So I like having all my not everything's 9 millimeter. So I only got to worry about getting one kind of ammunition,
yeah,
22s and 9 millimeters, and I really like that little carbine. It's a super nice. I shoot it real accurately, and it's not too much kick to it. It's pretty usable and fun to shoot. So that's what I'm working with over here. That's as
yeah.
a I'm still kind of new to the game, but as an aspiring gun guy, I'm happy with where I'm at right now.
I think you're well on your way. I think you're there. Especially if you're out there, like taking down squirrels and heading to the range regularly, dude. Yeah, you're doing it. You know, I mean, there's like, are you? I'm not gonna like. That's really what the heart of the Second Amendment is about. Like whatever you want to, whatever you want to really use your handguns for, as long as you're not hurting anybody else, then it's
Mhm.
generally going to be fair game.
Yeah,
So
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yep,
yeah,
I'm a big proponent of the Second Amendment. I think that our founding fathers were really wise men in a lot of ways. I don't think they were, they're not gods. If somebody deifies the founding fathers too much, you can say, okay, well, a lot of them had slaves, so like they weren't infallible, but that
yeah,
doesn't mean you can discount the amount of wisdom and these dudes all read philosophy. They were very versed in not just political philosophy and different types of philosophy. They also were very familiar with human nature and the way human beings uh, you know, interact with each other and how they operate. And they they felt it was necessary for us to be able to protect ourselves. And I think that we if we discount that we do that at our own peril.
yeah,
And that also and also we need to recognize that you know a lot of people will tell you that they believe in the Second Amendment, but then they'll tell you that it doesn't apply to what you want to have, right? Though
yeah,
it's the same with the First Amendment. It irritates me so much when people be like, "Oh no, I'm all for the First Amendment," but what you're saying right now is not covered. It's like actually, yeah, it is. Actually, whatever you think I'm not allowed to say, that's
Yeah.
exactly what the First Amendment does cover, and I
If it
it's like
says "but," if you gotta follow it up with a "but,"
yeah,
then you're
yeah,
wrong, you know?
yeah, it's
So,
frustrating, and then you get other people who think that the First Amendment means that you can say whatever the government is okay with you saying. It's like, yeah, that's an even more insane take on it, 'cause, like, what would the point of the thing be? If that was right, what would the point of the First Amendment be if it's like, "Oh, yeah, no, you can have you," or the Second Amendment, yeah, "You can say whatever the government says is okay." You can have whatever guns that the government wants you to have, you the people who are approved can own arms. It's like, "No, man, that's not what they were saying. That's not what
yeah,
the founding fathers were saying." And if you disagree with it, you can disagree with it. That's also valid. It's valid to disagree with the amendment. You can say, they messed up when they wrote that. I don't agree with them. That's fine. But don't tell me that you agree with it and then try to tell me that it doesn't mean what it definitely means. Um, it's just frustrating.
it's
It's
super
like,
frustrating.
yeah,
It's super
yeah.
frustrating because you're sitting here and, like, all of these other rights, the Second Amendment, I mean, the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, none of those other rights get the scrutiny that the Second Amendment gets.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, the Second Amendment has to jump through all these other hoops, like,
right.
oh, well, in some states you have to state what the intended use was. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like,
Yeah,
is it like that doesn't apply to the First Amendment. That doesn't apply to the Fourth Amendment,
right.
Like,
Right.
some states you have to have, like, a like a waiting period. You have to, submit to, like, all these other different jumps. You have to have, like, Illinois is like the worst case scenario because you're looking at, like, okay, you got to have an identification card to own guns.
Yeah.
And then you can only own the guns that they tell you to own. You can't own certain types of guns. And then you can't carry those guns unless you have another, permission slip. And then they get to control where you take all those guns. And it's all these other things where if you try to apply those same rights to a cell phone, then none of that stuff would fly. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, you just look at the language of the amendment. It says the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's the language.
All
So
this
what is it
garbage is an
wh-
infringement.
what is infringe what's the definition of the word infringed? Like like how could you say that any of this is not an infringement? It clearly is. It very, very clearly is. And it's like, like we've talked about before, like, all this stuff only applies to law-abiding citizens anyway. So, whatever
Yeah,
you think you're doing, you're not taking guns out of the hands of criminals, because by definition, criminals do not obey the law, and therefore you're only taking it away from law-abiding citizens.
that's right.
It's the same with all these gun-free zones that you see. If I'm carrying concealed, sometimes I'll walk right by those signs and pretend I didn't see them, because it's like, I know that anybody else that could have a weapon on them, if they catch me, if they tell me, if there's a metal detector, if there's something where somebody tells me that I can't have the weapon on me, then I'll, oh yeah, absolutely, abide by the rules of your establishment. But if
Yeah,
if I walk straight by whatever means of detection. Like I've been in places that had metal detectors that didn't realize I had a gun on me. It's
yeah,
like, well, if they're not doing a satisfactory job of figuring out who has a weapon, then I'm gonna go ahead and assume that other people in here might have a weapon on them, and that's
yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's just
It, what it does is it illustrates a lack of understanding of what violence looks like. That's really what it
sure.
is. The
Hmm.
and I genuinely think that the folks that pass these laws, like the folks that are, that support gun control, are they have the same goals and the same values as the people that support gun rights. It's
Hmm.
just
Right.
we go about it in very different ways because we actually understand what violence looks like. We understand the nature of criminals. You hang up that sign that says, no guns allowed.
Hmm.
Like, unless you have like somebody patting me down,
Mhm.
or unless you have like a walkthrough metal detector that's going to pick it up, you're not stopping anybody. It's
Mhm.
really just a polite suggestion saying, "Hey, we would have really appreciated it if you didn't bring guns in here."
Yeah.
And if that dude decides, "Hey, I'm just going to kill everybody in here," or if they decide, "You know what, I'm going to rob this place," or if they decide, "You know what, I just want to carry it in here," there's nothing stopping any of that.
Mhm.
And once violence happens, the only thing that's going to stop that dude is us.
Right. Right. I mean, everybody recognizes this too. Nobody, you know, I hate when people will just sort of scoff at somebody making a logical argument. But people will when you say that the only thing that will stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun, people give you attitude. They're like, "Ah, sure," but you also believe that. That person who's scoffing at you also believes that. They just think
Mhm.
that it should be left up to the police, which is just a guy with a gun, right? You just
Yeah.
that is factually true. A bad guy with a gun, the only thing that will stop him is a good guy with a gun. And so, if I could snap my fingers right now and magically take all the guns out of all the bad guys' hands, I would do that because I'm not just for everybody having a gun. I recognize that just because you write a law that says bad guys can't have guns, that doesn't mean that they're not going to. It's just there's no magic switch that we can flip. There's no way to write these laws to where the implementation is going to be effective in the way that the people who are writing them think it's going to be. That's really what it comes down to. Like you can put anything on paper.
Mhm.
You can write
Yeah.
anything down. The law is what you can enforce basically.
Yes.
That's what the law is what ends up being applied to society as a whole. That's what the law. It's not the words on the paper. That's not what the law is. The law is what is enforced. And what you can enforce in this case is limited.
Yeah.
It's always
Yeah.
limited. So,
Yeah. Last time I had
um
to call 911, I got a busy signal.
that's
So,
yeah, I
a
mean,
busy signal, man. They're not
it's
coming. I'm on
it's
my
like,
own.
I know cops and I know good dudes that are cops, but it's just you have to protect yourself. You have to make it so that you are capable of protecting yourself. It's it's not anybody else's, um I mean, it is their duty. That's what they've taken on is the duty, but it's just you have to take responsibility for your own safety. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
there's just
Yeah.
no way around it. And if you're not doing that, then it, most likely it's going to be assumed by people who are not the people you want to to
Yeah.
be taking that responsibility.
Yeah.
If we don't take the responsibility of protecting ourselves, then it's likely that people who are tyrannically leaning are going to be the people who end up having total control, and that's not what we want either. We don't we don't want those people to be in charge of everything because that's just going to end up in a bad place as well. So
That's not freedom. That's a
no,
gilded cage.
yeah, right,
No, no, thank you.
yeah, yeah, it's not a good idea. So
Yeah.
we have this rally coming up. It's with Tennessee taking action, right?
Yeah.
Our
So, can you tell me a little bit about, like, Tennessee taking action and, some of the work that you do with these guys?
Well, it's a non-party affiliated coalition group. So it's got Republicans, Libertarians, Democrats, anybody who believes in people's right to protect themselves can be a part of Tennessee taking action. And then we're meeting in Nashville on January 20th. So if you guys are in the area, you want to come out and support and let us know that you like what we're doing. We'll be downtown. What's it called? Isn't it just called
Yeah.
Public
Public
Park?
Square.
Public Square. Okay.
Yeah.
We're both Memphians, so we don't really know Nashville that well. It's right down in the middle. It's right next to Jeff Ruby's Steakhouse. I know that because that's one of my favorite places in Nashville. If you've never been, little endorsement for Jeff Ruby's. It's a good piece. It's a good steak. But anyway, the primary things that we're talking about are well, it's mainly red flag laws that we're opposing. There's a few different bills that are going to go in front of the House, um, and luckily one of them looks like it's not going to pass. So we're refocusing. Was House Bill 1574 is the one that was really troubling to us, but now it's House Bill 1640 is our primary focus. So these are bills that will allow a judge to basically strip the Second Amendment rights of a citizen without proper due process. This House Bill 1640 is specifically being passed in response to the shooting um, of a Belmont student that occurred this past year.
Mm,
So you had a offender who was ruled incompetent to stand trial and was released back onto the streets and was allowed to obtain a firearm. Now, this is a case where, I think that, this person probably should not have been armed, but they also probably should not have been, ruled, basically innocent because of reason of
yes.
mental incompetency. It's a failure of the legal system, in my opinion, that this person was out walking around on the streets. They had
Yeah.
already committed a shooting. They had already shot this. They shot. Let's see here. I got the story pulled up right here.
So he's
Um,
already a prohibited possessor. He's
he's a
already,
violent criminal. Yeah,
yeah.
he's he
So,
he he shot a
yeah.
he shot a teenager. He shot at a mother and her children in their car. So this is a violent criminal. Okay, he's a person. It's a breakdown of the system that has occurred here, and I'm I'm not for violent criminals being armed, and I'm also not for them being walking around the streets. So, it's a response to a failure of the legal system that they want to
Yeah.
take rights away from other people, basically.
Yeah.
Um,
Like, how did that dude end up on the streets? Why isn't he behind bars? And then,
yeah,
who gave him the gun? You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like how did, there's all these different questions that I have answered. And my main question here is, and this is the main rubric that I hold these lawmakers to, is how do you enforce laws? Like how do you write these laws in a way that single moms like my mom, like uh law abiding citizens and legally armed Americans, like how do you write these laws to where their rights don't get trampled on?
right,
Like how are people going to be able to protect their families and their kids with while keeping these idiots behind bars? Like,
yeah,
and I don't think writing more laws is going to do the trick. I think we just need to enforce
right.
and and properly interpret the laws that we have already. Like, how did this dude get free? That's
Well,
crazy.
I guess, yeah, it was a plea of mental incompetency, and I don't. I'm not familiar. I'm not a lawyer, so I can't tell you, how often lawyers, um, submit that as a plea, as a defense. But this guy clearly was dangerous, and so keeping dangerous people um, out of society is, that's the responsibility that's been taken by the by the police. And so if they're failing to do that, then that's what needs to be looked at. We need the other bill that we were initially looking at was House Bill 1574. That contained a bunch of additional um, restrictions for people that the judge in it, it's passed by a judge, so it's not like there's no due process whatsoever. I guess if a judge is
Yeah.
is making this order, then it's a little bit in between area. But it was anybody who was deemed to be a threat to themselves or others was the language of the bill, which, based off of a statement, you could say that somebody is reasonably considered to be a danger. That's not something that is crazy. Somebody making a credible threat of violence
Yes.
that's somebody who you need to be careful of. That's something you need to be worried about. However, that's a crime. That's
Yes.
something that's already illegal. You
It's
are not
already illegal.
you're not allowed to threaten somebody's life. You're not allowed to threaten assault. A threat of assault is a crime in Tennessee. That's something that somebody could get locked up for and should be.
Yes.
If it's a credit, and also not every I could tell you, oh man, I'm gonna kill you, right? Like that's not a credible threat of violence. Okay, that's me with my friend telling I'm gonna kill him. But
Yeah.
somebody who's making a credible threat of violence, that's somebody who does need to be kept out of society probably. Now
Yeah.
the thing about this House Bill 1574 that I thought was just insane was somebody uh threatening that they're going to be a harm to themselves was also somebody who could have their guns taken away. They get a judge's order for them to forfeit their weapons. I just think that that's crazy because like look, you got somebody who has already expressed that they don't care if they die, basically. You got somebody who is known to be armed. Okay? So now you're going to give them a judge's order that says they have to forfeit their weapons. What if they don't what if they decide they don't want to forfeit their weapons? What are you going to do? You're going to smash their door in? Okay? This is already somebody who doesn't care if they die. This is somebody who's armed. That's a complete recipe for like a standoff, right? Like
Yeah. Isn't
you're
there
basically,
I feel like there's a guy in Maryland where that actually happened. Like they showed up to his door
oh man,
and,
that was a
you know,
crazy case. What was that guy's name?
I forget his
Um,
name, but they showed up
yeah,
to his door and it initiated a gunfight.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I don't think he survived. So that should be a wake-up call
yeah.
to every single one of us that own guns, and then also to all these lawmakers
Well, there was
that
this
you're putting good law-abiding not just not really just the individual gun owner. You're putting law enforcement officers at risk.
right, right, yeah. No cop wants to be in in a standoff shootout with a suicidal person that so somebody that does need help. These people need help. We need, but if you criminalize mental illness, then you are going to discourage people from seeking help. That's what you will do. That's the
Yeah,
necessary consequence. So, again, this is just kind of how legislators often operate. They think one step ahead, okay?
yeah,
They think,
yeah,
"Oh, this person was deemed to be mentally incompetent to stand trial, so we're going to take away guns from everybody who's mentally incompetent." Okay.
yeah,
So first of all, that you run the risk of corruption, obviously, and if if you're a Democrat out there, maybe you should worry that the Republicans are going to deem anybody who's trans as being mentally defective. If you're a Republican out there, you should look at how politicized the whole legal system has become. And they talking about removing Trump is from the time Donald Trump was elected, they were talking about removing him because of mental incompetency, invoking the 14th Amendment. So the, they'll call you crazy. They won't hesitate to call you crazy. So
yeah,
worry about that for sure. But more importantly, I
yeah,
think you should worry about people being afraid to seek help for genuine mental illness and mental problems because they're worried about getting labeled as some kind of mental defective and then having their rights stripped away from them. It's not even three steps ahead. It's the next step. It's
yeah.
you're looking
It's the
you're
very next
looking at
step.
you're looking one step ahead, but look two steps ahead. Okay, that's what's going to happen. And um, again, if you could write these laws to make it so that's not going to happen, then maybe we'll hear you out. But I don't. I just think that the way it currently is set up, that's the necessary consequences.
Yeah, I agree. The like there's already services out there to help folks that need help. Like just like you were able to get help with, the fighting your demons.
Oh, yeah.
There are already services out there. But the thing is, like for instance, I'll give you an example. So there's a woman out there named Sarah Joy Albright, and she owns an organization called Hold My Guns. And that's where
Mhm.
you can voluntarily and you know uh what's the term, in secret, like confidentially, you can
Mhm.
confidentially call them up and say, hey, look, I need you to hold my guns for a while, and they'll have somebody
That's
there
awesome.
to, yeah, and they'll set up the resources, and they'll have somebody there to, you still own the guns,
Yeah.
and they have partnerships with multiple ranges where they'll actually keep your guns, they'll keep them in their safe, and it'll be under lock and key until such a time whereas uh, you make the decision that you're okay to receive them again.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome, that's a great service, and,
It's a fantastic service,
yeah.
man. So
Yeah, and, and also that's, something that I do have to, in addition to in addition to, because I was talking about this past bill, this 1574 before I knew fully about what it was, I was talking about it. They tried to make it more palatable to people like us who believe in
yeah,
rights. They really did. You didn't have to turn your guns over to law enforcement directly. You were allowed to turn it over to other people. So I think I feel obligated to express gratitude for the steps that they did try to take. Although ultimately I think they were not
I
enough.
mean,
But
yeah, it
um
needs to be it needs to be the gun owner's decision. You know what I
right.
mean? Like
Yeah.
imagine if someone kicked down your door and said, "Hey man, we're going to take all of your alcohol and we're not going to write you a check
Oh,
to
man,
reimburse you for it."
you would never have been able to tell me to not drink until I was ready to stop drinking. That's what
That's
I
right.
tell that's what 'cause and I've since I stopped, I've had multiple friends who also, have sobered up. And, but I haven't encouraged people because when people ask me, I say, I quit when I was ready to quit, and I don't think that anybody else is gonna quit until they're ready to quit. So, I would encourage you to I'll tell you that I think it's improved my life. That's all I can really tell you is that I think it's improved my life. I can't even tell you it's gonna improve your life, but it's improved my life. And, you know, I but if you had tried to take my alcohol before that, I would've fought you tooth and nail 'cause
Yeah.
and, um, yeah, I mean, yeah,
They
that's
don't
just the reality of the situation. I quit, I
These
used to
lawmakers, man. I don't
yeah,
get it.
I went through Alcoholics Anonymous, so that's a group that has come about that has helped just I don't know how many people, just innumerable people have been helped by Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's a group of people that look out for each other, and they've kind of figured out what the right way to approach people that have that specific issue is, and I think that it's fantastic, and I think that if we could have more groups like that, that it would help. We could have more, I'm super for people that are having mental trouble to seek help. There's just we're all having trouble out here, man. Things are
Yeah.
things are not going so great.
Yeah.
Our country is, I think we're still the greatest country on earth, and I think we can continue to be the greatest country on earth, but it's just there's a lot of weirdness, and there's a lot of economic struggle right now, and everybody's going through it. And if you are having trouble, just I just I think it's important to just have friends also. Just reach out to your buddies. Just give somebody a call. Just give somebody a
Yeah.
phone call when you're not feeling so good. So I think it would help if we all took a little bit of just tried to talk to people. Try to
Yeah.
talk to our loved ones. And if you need to seek professional help, seek professional help.
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. So let's hear a little bit more about this rally. It's going to be, January 20th. It's going to be, Nashville's Public Square Park.
Mhm.
and if I'm not mistaken, it's right across the street from from like City Hall.
Right.
Um,
Yep.
so
Right downtown.
um, it's going to be basically all day. You got people going from the morning to the evening, including Maj Toure, which
Super
you know
cool.
I've been wanting to meet him for a pretty good while. So this will be a cool opportunity. And then also this will actually be my first speaking gig. Like they're
Oh,
giving me half
yeah?
an hour. Yeah, they're giving me a half an hour, and I'm kind of scared to death. I just
Oh, man.
I think the best thing that I can deliver to this would be you know a look into the lives of people that own guns, right?
Sure.
Like some of the stories that they have to tell, some of their origin stories, and you know, and these people are being by gun laws.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. I think that that's a great idea. It's like, as much as we like to think that, statistics and data are how we make our decisions and drive, anecdotal evidence is powerful, and if you can tell specific stories of people who have been hurt, I think it'll convince a lot of people, and it's just there's so many, the victims of gun violence are so clear, this is it's
yeah.
very obvious, so it's very easy to demonize people who defend gun ownership, but, but the examples of people who were not allowed to protect themselves is a little it's a little harder to see, so any way you can shine a spotlight on that, I think will be incredibly helpful and important.
So including the people that successfully protect themselves,
Mhm. Yeah, that's
particularly,
super unrelated. It's underreported.
yeah.
Super
So
underreported.
there's a YouTube video of a an expose that a local news team did. His name is Lance Thomas, and in the 90s, right around the same time as the Watts riots, folks were getting out of LA, and Lance was a watchmaker. He sold antique and vintage watches, and he was in downtown LA, and a lot of the shop owners that were leaving were like, "Hey, man, you better go get a gun."
Mhm.
And so he was like, "Look, I'm not going anywhere, but I'll take you up on your advice. I'm gonna get a gun."
Mhm.
It was only weeks later when someone tried to rob his store,
Mhm.
and in the months and years that followed, he had gotten into 4 or 5 gunfights with gangbangers, and he had shot like 9 of them.
Wow.
And it really just came down to just making the decision of not being a victim. Now,
Mhm.
this is the same California where if he did it nowadays, he would have problems doing that.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, there's the bodega owner in New York who he didn't even have a gun, he stabbed the guy, right? I
yeah,
Yeah, he stabbed a guy who came behind the counter and tried to rob him, he stabbed him, and they threw him in Rikers, the self-defense is just not is not respected in our country, it's a real shame,
it's
but,
victimhood. Like
yeah,
victimhood is more of a virtue for a lot of these a lot of these groups and a lot of these lawmakers, and that's what they want for us. They want us to be victims. Um,
yeah,
I think that what happens is like you have to make a decision to be a victim. You really do. At some point, you have to decide that this other person that is coming to your life, that is pointing a gun at you, that is making demands, is going to be the one to decide whether you live or die. And I think that I think your life, Charlie, is worth more than that. You shouldn't have to make that decision. That's
yeah,
your decision.
yeah,
So, um, and I
yeah,
think that, what happens is because that is really the nature of violence.
mhm,
That's really what happens here. That's the threat that we face. That's the problem that we solve. And the issue is if you don't understand violence, then you're going to pass laws like this. You're going
mhm,
to get stuff like, well, how about we just write it, with a stroke of a pen, we can take away these people's guns and, then we won't have these problems anymore. And it doesn't work that way. You know, the
no,
the Crips on Third Street are not going to just line up and and turn their stuff in. You know, Mr. and Mrs. America will turn their stuff in,
yeah,
but the Third Street Crips are not turning their stuff in.
no,
MS-13's not going to turn it in.
no,
Gangsta's
I mean
Disciples ain't turning it in.
We got and it they don't have to acquire their guns legally. They what's the number one crime we see in Memphis, Tennessee? People's getting their windows smashed out in their cars. It's just constant. It's ubiquitous. It's all over the city, and every now and then they're getting a gun. So then now somebody has a gun. They're out there on the street, and it's untraceable. It's not it's, they're
Yeah,
not in any database. They're not in any that serial number isn't connected to any of them. So
yeah,
I would like to protect myself against those guys. Is that, I think, is that reasonable? Is that fair? And hey, and I might want to have a bigger gun than they have.
absolutely. Like,
Is that
they're
reasonable?
they may or may not, come like we're not going to be able to choose where this thing happens or when it happens.
Right.
We're not going to be able to choose like how many people show up to the party. You know,
Mhm.
I just need to have enough servings for everybody that wants to get involved.
Yep.
So, I'm not going to get a chance to, run back to the truck or, call a friend or I don't have a lifeline like, like a game show or something. The stakes are pretty high. So, I need to bring enough for me to fight with. Um,
Mhm.
and so when it comes down to, understanding what this stuff is and what it looks like, I I think that there's not enough honest and intellectual thought that goes into some of these. And the worst part is we're not even allowed at the table when
Yeah.
stuff like this is talked about. And that's the thing that really kind of,
Well,
that terrifies me
the
about this.
sad nature of the beast is that it's politics. It always comes down to politics, and politics is, these people on Capitol Hill, they're trying to get votes. That's
Yeah.
what they're doing. You can't have deep thinkers. It's not that you can't, it's just it's not particularly suited to people having deep thinking and deep conversations. It's really just whatever the superficial answer is that somebody can get a soundbite. I'm doing what the needs to be done to end gun violence. It's like, are you though? Because I don't think you understand that problem fully. I think it's a lot deeper than you're willing to look at right now. And putting a band-aid on an infected wound is just gonna let it fester, and it's gonna start popping. You're just gonna
Yeah.
have it
Yeah.
explode out in other weird places. That's kind of how a lot of these solutions get implemented. And
Yeah. Because
yeah,
they're just trying to win votes and get reelected.
it's really
And
what it comes down
that's
to
that's
a
not going to
lot
be
of
the
the
solution
time.
to our problems.
Yeah.
So,
Yep, so
yeah.
that takes it's I think it's important for us to be courageous, I went off a little half cocked on this. I didn't know what I was talking about 100%, and I still don't know 100% what I'm talking about, but I've read the summaries on all these bills that we're talking about here. And, you know, I told so my aunt and uncle live in Nashville, Tennessee, and I told them that I was gonna be a part of this rally, and that I was opposing red flag laws. And I assumed that they would be on my side because they're very reasonable people, very intelligent, reasonable people. My uncle, he's a hunter. He's a big avid hunter. He's got lots of guns. And he's a smart guy. Have you read the book The Creature from Jekyll Island? You know that one?
No, I have not.
It's
So,
about the Federal Reserve and the founding of the Federal Reserve. My uncle told me to read that book, and I had never heard of it until he told me to read it.
you
And
said Jekyll Island,
it's
right?
called The Creature from Jekyll Island. It's what is the author's name? I can't remember the guy's name.
Can you
But
spell Jackal like the
it's
animal?
it's like Jekyll. It's J E I think it's Jekyle. Jekyll Island.
Like
It's
Jekyll
in
and Hyde?
Georgia. Yeah, Jekyll and
Okay.
Hyde. Yep, yep. It's in Georgia. I've actually been there. I've been to Jekyll Island when I was a kid. We went down there to the beach so I'm from Atlanta, so that was like about as quick as you can get to the ocean. But
Yeah.
it was actually J.P. Morgan that had a big hunting ranch on Jekyll Island back in the at the start of the 1900s, like the turn of the century.
Huh.
And they had a
Wow.
meeting there. They had a meeting there in 1911, I believe it was, that they had a meeting there. It was a bunch of the heads of all the big banks in America, and they basically came up with the legislation that would become the Federal Reserve Act of 1913. So that's
Huh.
it's just the story of how they created the Federal Reserve. And all that to say, my uncle told me to read that book. So he's not somebody who is particularly ignorant of the corruption and the that can happen at the highest authority, at the highest levels of government. And he's a person who questions authority. Anyway, I got a little sidetracked on that. I thought they were going to be totally on my side. What I hadn't thought of, which I probably should have thought of, is that my aunt is a teacher. She's a specialized reading teacher at the Covenant School. And she was at the Covenant School last year when Aiden Hale came in and started firing. She knows people who were
Oh,
killed.
wow.
She is, she's very connected to this issue. So I came off just giving them a canned answer, just telling them like, I don't think authoritarians should be telling us whether we should have guns or blah blah blah. It's you know it's hard because I realize when she told me she was at the school that how scary it was. Like she started talking about like she's a devout Christian, and she started talking about how like she thinks that like God, he's worried about a bigger plan, and he doesn't care about us individually. I'm like I mean
Oh,
it broke my
no.
heart. It really broke my heart.
Yeah.
And we have to figure out a way to convey our ideas to people without closing ourselves off to the humanity of like the actual horror of these things that happen. Like we
Yeah.
have to keep our humanity. I hate to tell you that when I heard the news of that shooting, I could already feel myself becoming emotionally closed off because I was preparing myself for all the emotional appeals that were going to be laid against us. And it's hard because we have to experience the emotional appeal, experience
Yeah.
it emotionally, appreciate it, and then also explain to these people how a quick fix is never going to be the answer to these problems.
Yes.
It's a deeper problem, and we're going to have to go to the root of the problem in order to solve the problem. The problem is not the weapon. The problem is not it's not even. I mean, you can up the security in the schools. That will help. Obviously that will help. But it's also it's just why has this phenomenon happened? Why are these school shootings happening? And it's such a deep and complex issue.
Yeah.
It's hard to answer. It's hard to answer that question. And I think a part of it is that people just don't feel like they have as much to live for these days. We don't we feel like we feel a lot of people feel very disenfranchised, and like
Yeah.
like there's not the same amount of opportunity that there used to be. That I think that's one facet of it. But it's
Yeah.
just it's such a deep and complex issue that
There's a big
it
problem.
we
Like,
can we can talk about it all day and we still won't get to the bottom of it. But we need to keep talking about it. And
yeah, it's going to take some time to really
yeah,
study this problem.
yeah.
And, particularly when it comes to like mass murders, like school shootings, church shootings, like these mall shootings and stuff like that. There's an expert that I know, and his name is Ed Monk.
Mhm.
He's out of his range is pretty close to Little Rock, and the man has an absolute ton of experience and data that is freely available on YouTube. So he actually puts up like a couple of his courses full length on YouTube so that you can learn more about this problem. And I went to train with him. I think it was either last year or the year before, where uh, I did his active shooter instructor course. So, and it's really just about about schools, about churches, and about private businesses that want to protect themselves from this problem. And the biggest problem, is that when you don't have a gun right there on the premises, you're really kind of expecting a double digit body count.
Yeah.
You gotta be able to meet that violence with
Yeah.
violence. You gotta understand the violence of the problem.
Yeah.
And on a legislative system where, you try to pass a law in order for you to do this, it's almost like trying to take a shovel and dig out the ocean.
Mhm.
It doesn't work. You have a whole different problem. Another trainer that I would recommend is, yeah, Steve Moses of Palisade Training Group.
Palisade Training Group, right. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
you were talking to him. I really liked his whole thing, and but the crazy thing that he said, if you remember this during the podcast, what he said was he said, how what are you trying to limit the count to?" And he said if
Yes.
somebody says 0, he knows he's not talking to somebody serious, because he says it's 1 is the answer. You wanna limit it to 1, because if but what does that mean, right? Like, what's the deeper thing there? That means that, you know, realistically,
Realistically.
you just can't prevent everything, right? Like, if somebody wants to be violent, dude, there's people in federal prison that are figuring out how to murder another inmate or murder a corrections officer. They get little scraps of metal and plastic and they fashion a knife out of it, and then they commit murder while they're locked up. So what's the takeaway from that? Basically, we could treat everybody in our whole country like a prisoner, and we still wouldn't prevent violence from occurring. It wouldn't happen. So what you can all you can do is respond and prevent and be prepared, as prepared as you can possibly be,
Yeah.
because because if the sad truth of the matter is, if somebody wants to kill a lot of people, they can probably figure out how to do it. And you know, all you can really do is be thankful that we live in a society where it doesn't happen that often. People, but you know, most people out there are good people. That's just
Yeah. Yeah.
you just walk around. You walk around. It's not because I can't kill my neighbor that I don't do it. It's just because I like them. They're nice people. It's
Yeah.
just
Like,
so
I think
yeah.
our lucky stars that we don't have groups like, Boko Haram
Oh yeah.
or freaking like, Hamas or, something like that, where they can just go and just kill swaths of people with
Indiscriminately.
impunity. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Yeah.
And, there's like not going to be any repercussions or
I
anything
mean,
because there's no one there to stop them.
yep, and
So,
I think having an armed population is part of the reason why that it's like that here. And
yeah.
you know, it's just yeah, like I said, like you just we live in a society. You have to trust your fellow man to a certain extent, and you know that requires a certain amount of faith. And but there's just no other way for us to live in a society than to
Well, a
just
free society.
a free society.
A free
Yeah,
society. Yeah.
yeah.
Because, you could have a society that's so safe, that you're just like for instance, right? Like I'm thinking back to like communist Russia, where
Yeah.
if I want to visit my auntie in Georgia, I needed papers in order for me to cross
Mhm.
state lines,
Yep.
or you can't like go off and buy uh let's say I wanted to have a steak dinner tonight. Well, you need to provide enough rations and stand in a line in order for you to go and do stuff like that. Like, the thing is though, that's you can argue that society is extremely safe
Mhm.
because people are so poor that they don't even have the resources to to obtain weapons.
Yeah.
So like here, it's like, okay, we have such abundance of freedom, such abundance that not only can I have tools to defend myself and my family against street crime, against mass murderers, against uh you know uh people that want to just send a message. um
Mhm.
Not only do I have the right to buy those tools, but I also have the right to even decide which tool I want to use
Yeah.
to solve that problem.
Yeah, and
So
you're not working nonstop every day trying to just put food on the table, so you have a little bit
yeah,
of extra t you have a little bit of extra time, and what does that mean? That means that people who are entrepreneurial will have extra time to build a business. That means that an evil psychopathic person has a little bit of extra time to think really hard about how they can orchestrate some sort of act of violence. It's, you know, it's It's
Yeah.
pros and cons. It's, you got if you're a good person, you can use freedom for good. If you're a bad person, you're going to use freedom for bad. And
Yeah.
we,
It's just the nature of humanity. So, you know,
yeah.
but anyways, yeah. So we've been going for a pretty good amount of time. I need to be respectful of your schedule and your time.
Absolutely. Hey, man, I really
So
appreciate you having me on. This has been a very fun experience. And
Charlie, man, I think I laughed more in this episode than I ever have in any other episode of Everyday
oh man, I
Conversations.
thought I was being serious the whole time. I thought I was being preachy and self-righteous most of the time. I'm glad that there was a little bit of humor mixed in. But yeah, no doubt, I'll come back anytime, and
Absolutely.
we'll have to have you back on Golden Nonsense again soon.
I'd love to come
And
back and love to have you back on here.
and
So Charlie, if people want to reach out to you and get a hold of you, how can people get a hold of you?
oh man, well, the most important thing, please just subscribe to Golden Nonsense on whatever your favorite podcasting platform is. It's the most fun I have is the hour that I sit with my friends and crack jokes. But in addition to that, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter. I'm on both of those platforms fairly regularly. If you happen to be in the Memphis area, you can come check me out at High Tone on Tuesday nights. Or we also just started a new group on Facebook. It's called Memphis Laughs, and it's going to be a all things stand up comedy in Memphis Facebook page that you can follow, and it'll have every open mic showcase show. Just everything's going to be on there. So go
Yes.
over there and like that page, because people have been giving me a hard time saying that I'd come see you, but I don't know when you're performing. And it's going to be on that page, and that's going to be citywide. It's going to be all the stand up comedians around here are all going to be posting all their stuff up on there. So go give that a like. And yeah, thanks again for having me. Hopefully we'll have some good news following our rally here, and
Yeah.
everything will come up on the good guys side.
Right
And
on.
then and then um and yeah, and we'll keep working hard.
Right on. Let's see. So I'm going to get these notes and I'm
Okay.
going to post them with the podcast. That
Absolutely.
way
Yep.
people that need to, if they need to reach out to you, they know where to do so. Um, man, tell you what, Charlie, this was a ton of fun. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, man. And I gotta come shoot with you. That's the next thing. I gotta come get some shooting done. Are you by any chance gonna be out there at Bartlett on Wednesday? I was
I am.
wondering about that.
Yeah.
You gonna be at Bartlett on Wednesday?
That IDPA match. Yeah, I'll be there.
Yes. You'll be there?
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna
Yeah.
come hang out. I'm gonna come hang out. I will
Right
see you
on.
there. I will see you there for sure. Heck
Excellent.
yeah. Heck
And
yeah.
folks, if you're watching or if you're listening, I just want to say thank you so much for spending your time with us. I know that your time is very valuable and you could have been spending it with your family or earning some extra cash. I just want to let you know how much we appreciate you spending your time with us. We really do appreciate it. So, so folks, thanks again for watching. Charlie, thanks again. Thank you for watching and listening. Welcome to Memphis.